The following presentation was recorded live in Cincinnati, Ohio for CALLERLAB's 25th Annual Convention. This is Tape 5, Difficult Communications.
Before we get started, there's a couple of things we need to do business-wise. You probably read in the direction that we will have some tables set aside tomorrow at lunch for us to sit together for anyone who wants to. Obviously, if you don't want to, if you want to sit with your caller, that's very okay. But for those of you who would like to sit at the partners' tables, I'm supposed to get a general idea of how many want to do that, although I don't think this is going to be representative because I think there's a lot down the hall. Anybody who would like to sit at the partners' tables, please raise your hand and let's get an idea. Okay, thanks. For those of you who don't... Is that another hand? Okay. Yes, I did. I just need a general idea. It doesn't have to be exact, and I'm probably going to double or triple it because they told me there's 180 partners registered, and this isn't 180 people, so I have a feeling, much as I figured, a lot of the partners have gone to T2000. I'm Kathy Davenport. I'm the chairperson of the Partners Committee. I was appointed in September of last year. And I see Mary Ellen Alexander out there, who's the vice chairman. Mary Ellen, you going to stand up so they can at least see you? You're tall enough that they knew whether you were sitting or standing. We didn't have to make that joke for you. In your packet, you did have a partner survey, I hope. One person said they didn't, but if you didn't, ask for one. I have a few extras here that I brought along. Hopefully we have some up front. If not, we'll make copies. It is asking for a lot of information, so you probably won't have it filled out here. If you could take it home, duplicate it, give it out to some of the other partners in your area. One thing that I found out in planning this convention is that a lot of the resources that are available, unless we really know each other, and I don't know everybody, is that the EC gives us callers to recommend us as speakers, which is fine, except that this time we have T2000 and they're all down the hall. So that I thought it would be nice if we could get some information on ourselves together so that in planning future conventions we would know what resources we have within ourselves. Because there's a lot of resources, we just probably don't know what they are. Well, we definitely don't know what they are. Also, I would really appreciate critique sheets. There were very few, if any, filled out last year, and they really do help us to plan future conventions, to know what you liked and also what you don't like. Because when we're planning, we're kind of maybe in a small circle, and we need to know what everybody wants to do. When we end up, we will have some time hopefully have some time for questions and answers. We do need to put everything on the microphone. We are being taped. However, we do not have a roving microphone, so I will ask if you have questions, comments, suggestions, that you come up front and use this one. We did ask, and we were told we don't have one right now. This session is on coping with difficult people in business and life and square dancing. Obviously, we all know that we deal with difficult people in every walk of life. If you work a day job away from the square dance world, you deal with difficult people, and definitely we know in the square dance world we deal with difficult people. Fortunately, there aren't a whole lot of these people, but they probably take up 50% of our time and give us 50% of the stress that we have. Some of the difficult communications that you have may be with the caller that you drive to and from that dance with, other callers, partners. Oh, I guess I'm right on that one. Certainly the club members, there's bound to be some difficult people in that. When you deal with the callers associations and the dancers associations, those are all difficult communications. Difficult people do learn to be difficult because their way of dealing with other people gets them what they want. It works for them because it programs us to behave in a certain typical way. We need to learn to cope with those people so that we can stay sane or close to it. Coping with them helps us to feel less frustrated, and there are certain methods to deal with certain types of difficult personalities. There's essentially 7 difficult personalities. There's a hostile aggressive trio, which consists of Sherman tanks. Those are the people that come at you, poke their fingers at you. They let their physical presence intimidate you, or they use it to intimidate you. They want to make their decisions now. There's no waiting. They have an absolute need to prove that they're right to you and to themselves. If you get in their way, they can roll over your self-esteem so fast that you don't even know it's happening. What you need to do to cope with this type of person is to stand up with them. Stand up to them. Don't get in a cat fight with them. You're likely to lose if you do. Remember, these people must escalate the fight. You have to stop the fight. You have to use words such as, "I disagree with you." Follow that up with, "But tell me more about what's on your mind." Or you can say, "In my judgment," or "in my opinion." And you need to always look them in the eye. And if they interrupt you, you need to stop them and say, use their name and say, "You interrupted me." Don't say, "Don't interrupt me," but just indicate that they've interrupted you. Once you stand up to the Sherman tank, don't be surprised if they turn around and act friendly. Once the tank has learned to respect you, they often want to be buddies. Along with that type of person is a sniper. They shoot from cover because their victims pretend nothing bad is really happening. They'll laugh or they'll smile. In coping with this type of person, you need to first get them alone because they play to an audience, and then ask them if they really meant what they said or meant it the way they said it. Sorry, lost my place. The camouflage is you acting as if their comments are just jokes, so you always need to deal with them. And be prepared for what they may come back with is, "What's the matter? Can't you take a joke? Or you're just too sensitive?" Don't let these statements set you up as a victim. Don't let them get away with it. And then there's another type of person who's an exploder. They're very scary because one moment they're calm and the next moment they're off the deep end. For this type of person, just look them in the eye. Don't even respond. You need to stand up to them, but let them run down and listen to them. And then you just kind of comment, "This is really important. I want to hear every word you have to say, but not this way." Remember that you may not have anything to do with their outburst. You need to get privacy. Try to get the facts. Offer a concrete way to work it out, and have a plan of action. Those are the types of hostile, aggressive persons. Another type of person is an indecisive person. Can't make up their mind when you need them to do something. You need to get the problem out in the open and propose a solution. Always support them in their decision making. After they've decided something, you need to make a personal statement such as, "I'm really glad you decided to go along with me. I believe this is the best thing for you to do." Watch for nonverbal signs of anger and impatience. Avoid pressuring them into making an impulsive, emotional decision. Another type of person is a complainer. That's probably a big part of our world is complainers. It's a whining tone that sounds accusatory. They believe that what happens to them lies in luck, the weather, fortune. The lottery? Yeah, probably. They also tend to have a pretty concrete vision of about things that ought to be. But because they don't think they have anything, they can do anything about it, they look for you to solve their problems. You need to listen actively, which you probably won't want to do. You need to acknowledge back to them that you understand what they're saying. Paraphrase what they've said. Don't agree with the complaints, even if you think they're accurate. It's very hard to do that. Complainers do see things that are wrong with the world, and their zingers often zing in right where you hurt the most. Don't agree with them. Don't apologize. Ask problem-solving questions such as, when did this happen? When did you last notice it? Is it better sometimes? Worse sometimes? Give limited tasks to these type of people. Put the complaints in writing. Give them a deadline. These people really do feel powerless. It's your job to solve problems to help them solve the problems. They expect you to solve them, and you need to help them solve them instead. Negativists, some people in the world say no to almost everything. They have a negative response to almost everything. Coping with these people, it's most important to have a positive comeback so that you can stay in a positive atmosphere and keep yourself positive. Never argue with them. You will never win because they've always got a negative comeback to anything you can say. In one-on-one situations, build what's called a horror floor. Ask what the worst thing that could happen is, and from there it has to get a little bit better. Finally, when you're coping with negative people, always be ready to take action on your own. It will keep you from being dragged down. It affirms your intention to do something, and often it will offer help to others, including that strange negativist who will say, I think you're nuts and there's no point in doing it, but I'll help you. I don't know that I've ever run into that person, but
some have.
So maybe I've never handled that negativist the right way because they've never offered to help me. There's also clams, silence. Some people are silent because indeed they are withholding communication from you, achieving a power over you by not giving you what you want. Some people are silent because they know if they don't say anything, they are then free to sabotage what is being talked about. The information I have doesn't also say, obviously, some people are silent because they're too shy to open their mouths, which used to be me, obviously. I am still shy enough that I'm having trouble reading this in front of you. So from that point of view, there are obviously other people that just are not communicating because they're very shy. In coping with a clam, you need to start with the conversation. You're the one that wants to talk, so you need to start it. And you need to make open-ended questions so that there's something for them to respond to, not questions that need to be answered with yes or no. When you've asked your question, you need to be silent. You need to give a friendly stare. You need to let them know that you're expecting an answer by sitting forward, opening your arms, raising your eyebrows. You need to look expectant. You need to sit there and you need to wait for them to respond to you. Don't make conversation. It's important that you don't fill the silence with your own talk, which is very, very difficult. Another type of person is the bulldozer, the person who knows it all. They have the right answer to any problem. They won't hear anything you say, and if you disagree with them, they'll take it as a personal insult. After you've heard a bulldozer describe a plan, you need to paraphrase back the main points of what he or she said. If you do not do that, and then ask a question, or you look confused, the know-it-all will assume that you didn't understand what they were saying, and they'll explain everything all over in greater detail. If you have objections, make sure they're brought to the attention as questions. And there's two kinds of questions. The first one is called the baby blue eyes question. You look, you know, I don't exactly see how that will work. Would you explain that to me? Why do that instead of being honest? If you're honest, the bulldozer will not hear a word you say and will argue with you. But if you ask a question, at least they will hear what you are saying and may indeed discover that they are wrong. Maybe.
You don't believe it?
I'm not sure. At least you'll have a conversation with them. The other kind of question is similar but is more powerful. It's called the extensional question. This kind of question asks someone to kind of spin out their ideas, their plans over time, over space. More than other people, these expert know-it-alls are influenced by facts, by logic, especially by their own facts and logic. And then, of course, there are the super agreeables. They'll do anything for you, or at least they say they'll do anything for you, and then they end up not doing it. You have to get them to really tell you what's on their mind. Use statements to convey to them that you see them as an okay person. You need to help them through rough spots without making them having to admit that they can't do it or don't know how to do it. And super agreeables like a win-win situation. So if you give them a clear decision, they can usually handle that. Some extra tips are having a vision of success. Plan ahead how to cope with different types of difficult people. Visualize and rehearse out loud how you will cope with these people. And observe everyone else's reaction when you cope with these difficult people. My husband, Larry, has agreed to come and talk. He deals with many different communication situations in his work as well as in the square dance world, but especially at work. And he's a pretty good negotiator, so he's agreed to come and talk. Actually, I guess I did pretty good negotiating because I got him to agree to come and talk.
I just want to point out that was the first time that she's had to give a presentation like that, so it was really... Yeah, I agree. I didn't negotiate very well because I'm here. You've heard her describe a lot of different types of people, and I can tell as she read those through and talked about them, certain people said, yeah, I know that type, and other people said, I know that type, and so I know there's a lot of feeling out there that these are difficult people to deal with, and you all see them, whether, as Kathy said, whether it be in your home life, your work life, or your square dance life. I'm going to talk a little bit about the kinds of people, and I'm not going to re-describe these types of people. I'm going to just describe, I think, a few ideas on how to deal with being able to communicate. I think the first thing I would say, though, is you've got to have some confidence in yourself. If you are doubting yourself when you're talking with people, that's the first thing that's going to get in your way. It's difficult getting over being shy. It's difficult getting over a feeling of being intimidated. It's difficult to stand up for yourself. And I don't know any magic formula to do that. Practice helps a lot. Hearing some types of tools helps a lot. And when I'm done what we hope to do, we'll have some time. It's not sure how much time we'll have left. But some of you obviously have some experiences dealing with people in all walks of life as well, and we hope that some of you will come forward at that time and share your experiences with others. In my professional life, I work for Genentech, which is a biotechnology company in South San Francisco, California. I'm in the regulatory affairs department, and what that means is that my background is science. What that means is I get to deal with the Food and Drug Administration on one side. So if you want to talk about dealing with pure bureaucracy, certainly qualifies as difficult people. On the other side, I deal with internal functional areas within the company, our manufacturing, our quality, our clinical, you name it. And the role I've got is one where to help understand the regulations that we work under as a pharmaceutical company and how we can develop our products so that they're available for the market. The interesting thing about communication is if you are the leader of a group and all of your group reports to you and you say, do this, do this, do this, you don't have to be a real great communicator to do that because you've got a link for them to do that. They report to you. That's their job. They're supposed to. And so you may get away with skills that are something less than superlative. If you ask them nicely or you don't ask them nicely or whatever, you're still going to get your goal accomplished if the people directly report to you. How well they do it is obviously going to be dependent on how you interact with them. There's a fast way to get something done or a slow way to get something done. But in my line of work, with the food and drug, the last I heard, the government doesn't report to me. So I can't use that kind of leverage to get them to do what I would like. Quite the reverse. They think they have a lot of control over us. I don't know where they got that idea. And on the other hand, all those various functional areas within the company don't report to me either. So my ability to get my job done is how well can I communicate and how well can I negotiate with these people, because I can't tell somebody just to do it. Now there are times I can play the Food and Drug Administration off against the other ones. I said, well, it's not me telling you to do this, it's the Food and Drug Administration. So whether they told me to do or not, sometimes that works. But when you're in that particular position of where people don't report to you, and the last I looked around, how many square dancers report to you? How many callers report to you? Depends on how good you are at it. There's one hand over here. We expect you to be up here on the microphone later telling us how that works. But in that kind of position, you have to be aware that how you get along with people, how you interact with people is really important. So communication skills in that kind of environment need to be sharp. You need to build up that confidence. You need to be able to treat different people differently. When you think about all these different types of people that Kathy talked about, the one thing that I think is a skill for communication is you have to understand your audience. You cannot necessarily, if you deliver your message to 5 different people the same way, those 5 different people are different people. One of those people may respond well to your style, so you do well there. The other 4 people may not like your style, and so your success rate there is 20%. And the reason that you would fail in that situation is that you don't realize that you are dealing with different people who have different needs, and your ability to understand that and to be different, to come across differently to different people, you can raise your success rate from that 20% to, if you adjust so that now you're delivering for those other 4 people a style which is compatible with the way they receive, now you can get your success rate closer to 100% instead of that 20% you started about. And I think one of the important things about that is to understand that you can't make those 5 people you're talking to change the way they hear you. You can't control that. You can't manage that. But you can control and manage the way you react to those people so that you can create a setup where your style is more compatible with that person so you have a better chance for success. And that's something I've learned on the job. I've learned by going to various seminars over time, and it really it's the kind of thing where take the old example of how do you what time is it? Some people want to know it's 11:45. Some people might like to know how you built the watch. But if you tell the person that wants to know how the watch was built, it's 11:45, you failed. If you tell the person that wanted to know what time it was but didn't want to know how they built the watch, but you told them how the watch was made, where you got the watch from, how much it cost, you failed. And that's sort of an example of what I mean is you've got to be able to judge your audience in that case. What I'd like to do then is to go through just what I've written down here that I consider to be skills of sorts and just talk about them. I don't know if they're all in the correct order, but the order that I was thinking about it as I was planning this talk. One of the most important things you can think about when you're communicating with someone is to gather your thoughts before speaking. How many times have you talked with someone and when you stopped you have no idea what you told that person? It really happens. And if you don't have any idea of what you told that person, do you really expect that person to do you really expect that person to have an idea of what they heard? And even more importantly, do you know how your words, if you don't know what your words were, do you know how your words worked with that person? And so it's a trick that's not easy to learn, but there's two types of preparation. There's preparation. If you know you're going to have a discussion with someone on a particular topic, think about how you want to approach that topic beforehand. Now, that certainly doesn't apply to the situation of where it's just random conversation. Then that's a different situation. But if you know you need to approach a person, and particularly if you know that you're approaching a person that you have some difficulty with, you really need to think ahead of time, well, how am I going to approach that? If you also think about that person, and if you think about some of the attributes that Kathy was talking about, if you can identify some of those attributes in that person, then you have a better chance of thinking about, well, how do I, not only what is my message, but how do I want to deliver my message? And you have a better chance. And the next thing is that you need to be calm and collected enough to think about the words that are coming out of your mouth before they actually come out of there. It's a trick. It's not easy. You can try to practice this sometime, but it's almost a split-second thing. And it's something that I've actually added to my repertoire of things I need to do. If I'm really getting into a period of where I'm just not focusing, maybe I don't remember what the heck I said before I said it either. But you almost are looking at your words mentally or hearing your words mentally before they actually come out of the mouth, and you have a chance then to manage again a little bit of how that communication is going. Again, know your audience and watch your audience. I don't have any particular strong techniques to talk about with regard to body language, but there are some obvious ones. If you're talking to someone and they're frowning, you might suggest to yourself that either they're concentrating very hard or they're not really very happy with the way you're delivering it, the message. And you can react to that. If they're smiling, the obvious kinds of things. But as you're talking, you're also trying to make sure that an individual is hearing what you're saying. Kathy talked, at least in one of these, something that I use all the time. If you want to make sure you understood, now not talking to that person, but that person's talking to you, and you want to make sure that you're on the same page as to what was said, repeat back. Now, what I understood you to say is the following, and then you can find out whether you're really understanding each other. If you didn't hear somebody, don't cover up by pretending that you did, because that's not going to help you in the conversation. Come back and say, could you repeat that? I'm not quite sure I followed you. There's nothing wrong with that. If on the other side of the coin, you're looking at the person and you don't think they have, it looks like the lights are on but nobody's home, you're just not getting through, try another way of saying it. When we teach square dancing, for instance, dancers learn at different paces. I think we've all seen at different rates. Some people will respond well with words they hear. Some people need to see a demonstration. Some people need to get a picture in their mind. Trade, turn one half. No, it's the other wall behind you. Different ways to say that. When you're communicating with somebody, you need to try to tell if your message is getting through, and if it's not, try another direction. If you're not sure what that other direction is, you can use questions. Questions as, what do you think of what I've just said to you? And hope to get an answer back. Anytime you're using questions, it's good to avoid questions that say, did you hear what I say? What's the answer going to be? No or yes. But there's not a lot of communication that comes back in there. But what do you think about what I said? It's hard to say yes or no to that. Or why do you feel such and so about something else? It's hard to say yes or no about that. So questions that will facilitate a two-way dialogue will certainly help when you're dealing with some of these kinds of situations. The other thing, and Kathy mentioned this, be a good listener. Communication is as much what you hear as what you say, and I think that's all part of the part of reading somebody else. And the other thing that she mentioned that I really wanted to emphasize is, if there's silence, don't feel a need to jump right in and fill it. Sometimes when you're dealing with individuals, you may get to a conclusion quickly. They may not get there that quickly. they may need a little bit of time to think about it. If you've got a person that you're talking to and they're not really coming back at you with anything, and you may be trying to get your point across because you think they didn't understand you, but also try just being quiet for a while. Maybe they're thinking about it and they need a little bit of time before they come back and answer you. So that's another kind of a skill you can use. Don't fill up the empty space. There's no really need to. Good communications, the kind we deal with sometimes, are also a negotiation. If you want somebody to do something, or you want somebody to understand your position, then we're talking about a negotiation. And in a negotiation, you can talk about two kinds of situations. You can talk about win-lose, and generally speaking, if somebody wins and somebody loses, you can figure somebody's happy and somebody's not. And so that may not be what you really are trying to achieve. Sometimes that may be unavoidable. But another type of situation in negotiation is win-win. And so the first thing is, so if they believe that and I believe this, and how can you have a win-win? Well, that may be requiring that they give up their position a little bit to come closer to you. You give up your position a little bit to get close to them, and so we're in a compromise situation. Anytime that you're dealing with somebody where you're trying to accomplish something, I think that if you search for a win-win situation, you're always much better off than if you settle for a win-lose information. And that win-win, again, requires that you try to understand the other's viewpoint, and take care to explain yours. And look for, you're hoping that other person will find something in what you're saying that they can agree with. You're looking for something in what they're saying that you can agree with, and that's how you can arrive at that kind of thing. And the other thing is, you may run into people that they just know what is right, and there's just no way you can budge them. You got to be careful that you don't get yourself into that same kind of a situation. If you know what's right and nobody's going to convince you of otherwise, that's going to make that communication very difficult as well. That comes back to the good listener situation. Maybe somebody else has a point that you should consider as well, and so that's you don't want to identify yourself on these particular things. If you happen to be, what were some of those, Sherman tank, or if you happen to be some of these things, and that's a style that you don't care about, you have to recognize that in yourself, and you need to adjust so that maybe that's not the way you come across, and that will also help in the communications. Let me see where I am since I'm jumping around in my notes here. Be ready to compromise. That comes back to looking for a point where you meet in the middle and you have a win-win situation. There's another kind of a situation that I find switching from, well, it happens at work as well, but switching to the square dance setting. And when we're done, I also want Kathy to comment about communication that she does on the square dance floor, because one thing I notice, I think partners tend to communicate at square dances a lot more than callers do. And so, what she does on the floor is at a different skill, and maybe more skilled than what I have to deal with. So I'd like her to come back and comment on that at the end, just give you some prep time. But the thing is, when you're in these conversations, if you set yourself out to win every discussion, win every argument, you set yourself up for a fail situation, and it's very difficult. And do you need to win every argument? And what I mean by that, if I'm standing there as the caller and some dancer or somebody else at a dance comes up to me and wants to tell me their opinion of the world, and their opinion of the world may not be my opinion of the world, I think the first thing that goes through my head is, so what? And if there's no consequence, if they believe their way and I believe my way, and there's absolutely no consequence to that, the last thing I want to do is to try to start convincing them that they're wrong and I'm right. And so that's another thing that you need to think about is when you people want to come up and talk to you as the caller, people want to come up and talk to you as the partner, and they want to express themselves and they want to let you know what they think. If they let them do that, and if it doesn't happen to agree with your own view of the world, and it doesn't matter, that's where I'd say, so what? And that can help in it keeps a lot of arguments off the floor. As soon as you start to take a different position, you have the potential for a difficult communication, and you have the potential for for walking away from that. If it's handled badly, you have the opportunity to walk away from that, leaving somebody feeling bad when you didn't need to. And so that's one of the other things I wanted to mention at that point. A couple of other things when you're in communications that are difficult, absolutely essential to stay objective, absolutely essential not to let it become subjective. When I say objective, I think I mean keep it a bit on the impersonal side. Don't say you and me. That immediately makes it personal, and that can make it a difficult situation. Personalities, keep as much as you can out of discussion. Keep personalities out of it. Just stick to the facts, whatever the facts are. If you are negotiating over some little item like maybe T2000, which and I'm not taking any straw votes here as to who's on one side and who's on the other. I want to avoid that difficult communication, if you will. But the thing of it is, no, I got into 2000 and I forgot my thread of thought there. So I quit listening to myself. Forgot the skill right then and there. But if there is no, just to finish that other thing back, but you can avoid a lot of difficulties in the square dance world if somebody wants to tell you something, let them tell you, and if you don't agree with it, don't tell them you don't agree with it if there is no consequence to it. I don't know if that means there's no consequence to T2000 or not, or even if that should be on the plate.
You're not supposed to change the subject.
And the other thing is to try to keep yourself under control. Don't get angry. I have no idea why my face is red at the moment. Now, at this point at juncture, if you're angry, I'm really not at the moment. But if you are in a conversation where you feel anger building up, you want to politely, but somehow you want to disengage and you want to walk away from that. You may need to come back later. Or if the other person is getting angry, you need to agree that we'll finish this discussion later, but now's not the time to do it. And you just have to be okay with doing that. But if you get into that scenario where you just can't let it go, then it's going to escalate. You stop listening to yourself. That person's not listening to their self anymore. And you really don't have a communication anymore. There's some kind of a barrier in between. Somebody's talking on one side, somebody's talking on the other side, and nothing's happening. So that's a good time to walk away from that and come back to it later. If you're trying to get somebody to do something for the club or anything else, try to arrive, and it's a difficult situation, try to arrive at a plan, at a strategy of how to get it done together, work together. Look for some common plan that you can both agree to. But just at this point, I just want to mention, if you come back to that negative type person, that's a wonderful example. If today you say the sky is blue, no, it's not. Okay, the sky is gray. No, it's not. It's raining. No, it's not. The point is, no matter what you say, you're going to get back, no, that's not the way it is. And if you're trying to tell that person or talk with that person as to how to get something done or what could be a solution, they say, I can't do that because of this. I can't do that because of that. And every suggestion you come up with, no matter how positive you are, all you get back is it won't work for some reason. You've got to disengage. You really have to. And at some point, and our daughter gets into that mode sometimes. And we have to say to each other, and at some point we just have to say to our daughter, you take care of it. You got to quit giving them suggestions, because every time you give one, you get a reason why that can't happen. But if you finally say, well, take care of it, it's surprising that somehow at that point it gets done. And the other thing that I wanted to emphasize that Kathy said is if you've got that person, you do have to step back. Well, what's the worst could happen? And is that so bad? If it's not that bad. I mean, if it's, the world went in tomorrow, well, then you might not want to use is that so bad. But those kinds of things, you really do have to develop those kind of skills. And whether it's in work or on the square dance thing, talking with people, building relationships, building networks, and not only going to someone when you need something, but to talk with that person just to pass the time and say, how are you today, with having no particular agenda in mind as to what you're trying to accomplish, that's also a very important thing to do. The worst thing, and it comes back to my role as in regulatory affairs, sometimes we can be viewed as sort of the policeman that comes by and tells somebody in the company why they can't do something. And if the only time you go see that person is because you want to tell them they can't do something, guess how happy they want to be to see you come by. And it's the same thing on the square dance floor and where else. If the only reason you stop by is to complain to somebody, or the only reason you stop by is to tell somebody that you want them to do something, how happy are they going to become to see you? So having a mix of kinds of communications you have with people so that you are not just seen as one type of person, I think is also real important. At that point, I think I'd like to stop at this point, and if Kathy's got some comments about experiences with the clubs that we work with, and then I'd like to hopefully find some folks that would like to share some experiences.
I think that probably all of you have similar experiences as far as going out to the club. In some ways, I'm very lucky. We are not caller-run clubs, so I don't have to deal with running the club and making sure that things get done. I can go in and I can socialize with the club, and so therefore I make the rounds and I say hello to everybody. Especially our Monday night club, when Larry comes by himself, he hates it because it's a large club and everyone asks him where I am. So if I'm going to stay home, he just appreciates if it's not Monday night. They're very couple-oriented, so the fact that we are a couple, their previous caller did not come with his partner because he lives so far away, and they really appreciate me, fortunately. In all of our clubs, I get mostly to socialize. Next week, I will get complaints regardless of who filled in for Larry this week. I will hear that particular caller did this or did that, or they didn't like this or they didn't like that.
I don't know why, but for some strange reason, this club thinks I walk on water.
He's good at hiding things. So obviously that is a situation where I just have to kind of listen, and a couple times, depending on who I've been talking to, I just make the comment that, well, it makes you appreciate Larry more. Obviously, when the callers that are filling in have been criticized, I have to be very careful about what I say. And it doesn't matter who fills in, somebody didn't like them, as always. And there's nights that somebody doesn't like what Larry's doing, and I hear about that too. Mainly there, I just tell him that I'll pass along their information. He's calling too fast, he's too slow. They didn't understand a move, obviously. I'll tell him that during the night so he can walk it again. So I'm sure that all of you have that type of situation, and certainly those of you that have caller-run clubs have some other issues because you've got to deal with running the club and charging the money and making the refreshments and making sure the chairs are out and the floor is swept and all those other things that I don't have to deal with. Well, I do deal with it on Wednesday night. They don't sweep the floor sometimes, and I'll get the broom out and say, why are you sweeping the floor? Well, it's dirty, and I don't want everybody falling. So I think what I'd like to do is open up the floor, and hopefully some of you have some experiences that you would like to share with everyone. Probably any one of your experiences we've all had or will have, and so they will be helpful to us in the future. And you will have to come up here because this is our only microphone. And we are on tape, so if you want to come on up.
Hello, I'm new to square dancing, but I'm a registered nurse, and I have my own business at the child care center where I deal with 60 to 70 families. I've been doing this for over 13 years. And all of the personality types that you have described, I've tried on myself. So I understand, yes, so I understand some of what's underneath that. And in dealing with people who come at you in all of those different ways, what I've come to find out is the first thing you're dealing with anger and fear. That's usually what's coming at you. And there's a way to, disperse that with acceptance. But what's underneath all of that is an immaturity. Just kind of feel accepted and then feel safe. So once they feel safe, then you can deal with the person. And that's, so how do you do that? One of the things that I've found is, I had an experience in a courthouse where I had a lawyer who happened to have been my friend. And this man who was supposed to be selling a house had something come across, and he decided he wasn't going to sell me this house. He was just angry at something else. And I just sat very quietly, and we went through this whole day, and my lawyer had to leave the table 3 times, and I was just very patient with him, and ended up just having this wonderful conversation to him. He sold the house to me, and everything went along very well. And my lawyer called me up the next day and asked me, how did you do that? How did you remain so calm when he was being such a jerk? And I said, well, I looked at him, and what I saw was not a grown man, but a 5-year-old. And I know that when a 5-year-old is angry and headstrong, there is no way you're going to deal with him. So I just let him get all of his anger and anxiety out, and I sat there and looked him straight in the eye without getting upset. I just accepted him as he was. And when he got that all out, that was the end of it. And one of the people who worked for him came out to the new house that I had bought the day later. He said, Bill came back to the office and he said, I feel like the biggest jerk in the world. I said, thank you. So that's my... Oh, I'm Denise Ring from Brewster in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? I know there's experiences out there that we would definitely benefit from. One thing that was mentioned there is that we all have these types of personalities in us, and we need to deal with that, and we need to get past it. And certainly in working with learning to deal with these types of people, that should make it easier for us to deal with ourselves when we're in those moods, as it happens for everyone. Anything that you have that will be helpful in communication, because if you've had a communication experience, if we haven't already had it, we will probably have it at some point in our career as a partner. And certainly as partners, we're the ones that communicate with the dancers more than the callers do. They're up on the stage, and I think most, if not all, do come down and talk to the dancers, but it's mainly socializing. I know in my experience, when the dancers have a complaint or a suggestion or a problem, they come to me. They do not go to Larry. They expect me to let him know what's going on. They don't go to him. They think he's up there on a pedestal. I was talking to one of my groups, or one of the square dance clubs was talking, and as we all do, it happened to be a group of the ladies, and they were criticizing their husbands. And I sat down, and they said, "Oh, Kathy, you have nothing to say. Larry's perfect." So I got up and walked away before I said too much. Give your name and your...
I'm Helen Jarman, and I live in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. That's east of Nashville. My husband calls for a singles club. It's been an interesting experience. First of all, we danced. We've danced for over 30 years, and then 15 years ago he decided to start calling, and I was devastated. I thought, that's the end of my square dancing happiness. And it really has made a big difference in my life. We served as officers while we were, belonged to different clubs, but it isn't anything like being a caller's wife, because and I had a feeling it was going to turn out the way it did. It's really been wonderful in some aspects, and others it's been trying. I think we have to stay on a even plane and prevent our husbands from being too egotistical. These people, they flatter very often the women flatter these men and say how marvelous they are, and don't you look lovely, and feel they're, well, they don't wear ruffles anymore. You know, the shirts are plain, so they can't be touching the ruffles. So before they used to feel the ruffles. But anyway, it's a lot different calling for a singles club than for a couples club. There's a great deal of difference. But, you know, people are human beings, and everyone has feelings, and you have to take that into consideration when you're dealing with people. I was chit-chatting with Ellie Deesberg. Ellie also lives in Murfreesboro, and her husband calls for a couples club on Saturday night. And we both had the same experience. There's this older gentleman, and he's really a most unusual person. And he comes to the dance. He says, "A single," and if you saw him, you'd know why he was single. But anyway, he has been married before, and because he has a beautiful daughter that he's brought to the dances. But he sits on the side, and you know, everyone begins to form the squares, and he won't come forth and ask anyone to dance. Well, some of the women will go up and ask him to dance. Well, I made the mistake last week. We had to fill in a square. We needed one more couple. So I went and asked this gentleman to come and dance with me. Well, every time there was a mistake made, unfortunately it was him, and he stood there and stared at everyone as if it was their fault. You know, he didn't do anything wrong. It was everyone else's fault. Well, I just sort of smiled, you know, made light of it. Well, later on, after the dance was over, thank God, he sat down. He brought a woman with him, and her name's Helen, the same as mine. And he said to me, you know, he said, I intend to get her up to dance. He said, before the evening's over. I said, well, where has she graduated? He said, no. He said, any class disband. He said, before she graduated. I said, well, don't you think it would be very embarrassing for Helen? I said, if you wrote her up into a square and she couldn't dance? And he didn't say anything, but I was telling Ellie, I turned around about 15 minutes later, and they both had left the dance. So, I don't know. I thought it would be hard.
And one of the things that you have to learn over the course, and you pick these up depending on the situations, is there are certain things and key things you can say to diffuse situations. Because now, for instance, the young lady who was up here earlier with the real estate encounter, okay, she was fortunate she had the whole day to diffuse the situation. Unfortunately, we are not always in that situation. We've got 7 minutes between tips to do that. And it becomes a problem, like detaching yourself. So there are some key phrases. It also then forces them to think also, because now they're saying, okay, what's this person going to say later, and how can I diffuse that? And it's a very effective type of thing. Another thing you can use, if you have a little bit of extra time, let's say it's not between the tips, or it's after the dance, or it's during the tip and you're not dancing and they're not dancing, and you really want this person to rethink their position, you know, you can use words like, well, explain to me again how this is going to...
New callers, partners in here. One nice thing to do is to greet the people when they come into the dance. Get to know them. If you don't greet them at the door, go around the hall during the course of the evening. Introduce yourself. Make sure that they know who the caller's partner is, because you're a very important part. In fact, I think more important sometimes. Another way to get around, if you're a little bit bashful, of some of us are, we used to take a candy bag, and they could dig in and get their piece of candy out, wrapped candy, of course, and that way you can move on to the next without having to stop and have a complete conversation and get around to more of the people during the evening. It's a neat way to get to know the people, and after the candy is finished, go around again and say, gosh, how are you? It's nice to have you here. How are your kids? Do you have any grandchildren?
We do a lot of teaching. So we do what Roy does, defensive dancing, because we're in the Washington, D.C. area, and we have a lot of singles, and we never know what's going to show up. I really wanted to try... Well, yeah, we have had a man who is dressed as a woman, and her name is Nancy, and she comes as Nancy, and I have danced the boys' part with Nancy. But I really wanted to talk about another problem. I had a very difficult problem with another caller's wife. And it's going to be hard for me to talk about it. But I won't go into the situation. What caused it, it was she had attacked basically my husband without saying his name. Was a project he and another group of men were working on. So she basically attacked the group of guys. And what she said was unfair, untrue, and it was, I just felt like she attacked me too. So I never told her. I was just so furious. I never told her. I avoided her. We'd go to the meetings. I'd see where she's sitting before I'd go in, and I'd sit clear on the other side of the room. I wouldn't greet her. I wouldn't talk to her. I avoided her for a solid year. And at CALLERLAB, I'd see her coming down the hall, and I'd go another direction. It was just very difficult for me because I don't ever do this. And I don't know how to tell you this, but I'm a good Christian. I prayed and prayed about this daily. And I'm going to cry because of the ending of this. I really learned from this not to do this anymore, not to be angry, not to be upset with people. But I was one day reading some spiritual a magazine I was reading, and all of a sudden I said, here's my answer. I have to I've been saying the Lord's Prayer, and you all know that. Forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us. But it wasn't working for me. And this was an article of a story about another unfair situation. And what it is I had to ask her to forgive me for being so angry with her when she didn't even know I was so angry with her. And I said, this is my answer. And I sat there and prayed, and I had no more finished that prayer, saying, I'm going to ask her to forgive me, and, this is what I'm going to do. The phone rang. She just died while I was praying. And I said to my daughter, now I can't tell her. And she said, Mom, she knows. So from that I learned to never be so angry at anyone again, because she had a physical problem. And I realize now that was probably what it was all about. And I have found that when the people attack or are angry at you, a lot of times they have a physical problem. And I just pray for them. I go home and I pray for them. And I'm never angry at them again. So I really learned from that. So that's how I deal with difficult people.
Thank you. Thank you, Maisie. Are there any other? Yep.
Hi, I'm Deborah Roberts from Dayton, Ohio, and I deal with difficult people because I work for the county in Dayton, work for adult probation, so I unfortunately get people that are teacher here, sometimes you try and they end up in crime, so we try to rehabilitate them and try to keep them out of the jails and stuff, but I found, you remember that movie where the dancer was trying to have prom at a school? What was that called? No, it wasn't Flashdance. Was it Flashdance? Footloose. One of the key moments in that movie is when the biggest bully walked up to him in the hallway and was bullying him. He bullied everybody. And the guy was distracted, and he looked at him, and he says, excuse me, but I really love that cowboy hat. You know where I can get one like that? I just love that cowboy hat. And they became best friends. Found out this bully, and you learned why this bully was really a bully, and it was the fear. And, because he thought he was stupid and he couldn't dance. So this guy helped him, and he became one of the best liked kids in the school. And in our square dance situation, there was a woman that was a bully. I mean, and I had to deal with her. And so I remembered that movie, and I walked up to her one day, and I acted distracted, and I said, I'm sorry. I know I'm listening to you, and what you're saying is important. However, I love that vest. Where can I get that vest? Do you mind if I go out and buy that vest wherever you got it? Oh, well, yeah. And we started talking about this vest that she had on, and now we're best friends. And I was able to tell her later and learned that it was the same fears that she had, and that's why she acted the way she did. So maybe that will help.
Hi, I'm Valerie House from Indianapolis, Indiana. My husband is a caller. My husband is deaf. And a lot of times, that's a lot of the problem with hostile people. They're perceived as being hostile, but they really aren't. They probably just didn't hear you, or they misunderstood totally what you said and took it the wrong way. Communication is so important. I have to make a point of standing in front of him all the time so that he sees my face, my expression, so that he hears what I'm saying correctly. And a lot of times, even on the dance floor, when you're talking to people, especially the older people, you have to really make certain that they're hearing and understanding. And oftentimes I've found that the older people get in groups in the back, and they never hear the caller. So I always make a point of going back there and making sure the sound is good and that he knows that he needs to turn either the volume or the music up, one or the other. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want a couple of comments on a lot of what we've just heard. Now, just two things that strike me. One is don't draw conclusions about what the other person is thinking. Find out through discussion, because we hear some of these things. You may think that person feels that way for some reason, but you may have it all wrong, and so you really just can't make that assumption. And it's just so important also from the other story we had not to let something go by. But if you really need to talk to somebody about it, don't be afraid to do it. Approach the person and talk about it. But at this point, I'll turn it back to Kathy for final closing. But thank you all for coming.
As Larry said, you can't just assume about people. As I said, one of the types of people discussed is the person who doesn't talk, and that's not always because they're being difficult. It's because they're shy. Maybe they have nothing to say. Some people don't talk just to hear their voices. Some people don't say something if they don't have something to say. I appreciate all of you coming. We'll have another session here after lunch. Yes, we're in this room after lunch. We do have a committee meeting tomorrow morning. Everyone is welcome. You do not have to be on the committee. I would appreciate critique sheets and definitely the surveys. As I said, they do require a little more thought than you may find time for at the convention. My address is on there. Please give copies to other people in your area, and also fill it out and return it. I will take them at the convention if you do find time to fill them out. Thank you.